Hi pharmacists, this video is just for you. In this video, I'm going to explain how to approach a writing task, how to use your 5 minutes reading time effectively, how to demonstrate the 6 assessment criteria in your writing, how to use the sample answer provided, and how to learn from completed writing tasks. So, let's get started. The pharmacy writing test includes 4 possible types of letter: referral, discharge, transfer, and advice or inform. The reader of your letter could be to a different number of healthcare professionals, or to the patient or a family member. For example, pharmacist to pharmacist, pharmacist to doctor, pharmacist to patient, etc. Until you turn over the test booklet at the start of the reading time, you don't know which scenario it's going to be. The most important point is to be prepared to be flexible to meet any one of these letters and readers. Every patient is different. Their social background, their medical history, their current situation, these will all be different. Just like you wouldn't speak to each patient you meet during your working day using the same language and expressions, you need to be ready to use language and paragraph structure to make your letter personalised to this patient and this situation. Only then will you be demonstrating to the assessors that you have the English required to score a B grade or higher. Turning over the test booklet, there are 3 things you want to check as a priority. Although you cannot highlight or make any marks on your test booklet in the reading time, I'm going to highlight these 3 things so that you can clearly see what my eyes are looking at and can follow the approach yourself. The first 2 pieces of information are provided at the end of the case notes, so go there first to find out who you are writing to and what is their job role. In this task, you can see that you are writing to Mr. Davidson. But it's not clear who Mr. Davidson is. So I go to the notes at the start of the case to have a look there. And I can find that Mr. Davidson is a diabetic client of yours. Back at the end of the case notes in the writing task, I can find the second piece of information, which is what are you writing to him about? And here I can see I am writing to address his specific concerns. The third information is what is your role in the patient's care? And I've already found that by looking for who Mr. Davidson is. Mr. Davidson is a diabetic client and he has come to visit your pharmacy today seeking your advice. Before I start reading the case notes from the beginning, I want to make sure I have completely understood the reason for writing the letter. There are a lot of other details in the notes section, so I now skim over these looking for anything important. Some things particularly stand out. He is planning to travel abroad, and that he is concerned about several issues. Customs and security at the airport, taking his medication on board the plane, food and drink on the plane during the long flight, losing his medication, and whether there will be any effect on climate on his medication and equipment. These concerns link precisely to the writing task and help me start to think about how I'm going to structure my letter, for example, concern by concern. With this in mind, I can start reading through the case notes line by line, deciding whether each one is relevant to the reader or not. To help make the decision, I would usually ask myself 2 questions each time. Is this relevant to the reason for writing? And will this affect how the reader continues care for the patient? If the answer to both questions is no, I can omit this information. But if the answer to either question is yes, I will include the information somewhere in the letter. For this task though, writing to the patient, the 2 questions are a bit different. Is each case note relevant to one of the patient's concerns? And is the case note something the patient needs to action for his trip? In the reading time, you have to make mental notes as you read for your understanding. I'm going to highlight the notes which I pick out to be relevant, so you can see what I'm doing. Helpfully, the notes are split into sections. From the Before You Go section, I pick out that it's a good idea to get a letter from the doctor. and to tell the airline about the diabetes when booking. Although the what to take section looks useful, it doesn't relate to any of the patient's specific concerns, so I can ignore it. Airport security, however, is one of the concerns, so I look at this in more detail and notice several useful pieces of information. For example, to carry the diabetes supplies in the hand luggage, to be prepared to answer questions about the equipment, but there is no need to declare it, to show the letter from the doctor, that the insulin will not be affected by X-rays, and to ask for hand checking if concerned. From the on-flight section, there's lots of details, but the only things that are relevant to the patient's concerns are for food and drink on the flight. So I notice about what to eat and what to drink, and also not to inject insulin until the meal has been served. Losing the medication is another specific concern. So both of these points in the section about losing medication are going to be important. Where can the patient go if they lose their medication? And finally, from the precautions section, I can find information about how to store the diabetes medication and how it will not then be affected by the changes in climate if I follow that advice. Everything else is not related to this patient's concerns. Having reached the end of the case notes and talking myself through the situation, I now feel I have a good understanding of Mr. Davidson's situation, but also how I'm going to structure my letter. If I still have time left out of the 5 minutes reading time, I would read through everything again carefully, reminding myself of the decisions I just made. Once the writing time starts, I would now underline those notes which I highlighted for you, so I have a clear record of the information I want to include in my letter. I would also turn to the blank page on the back of the answer booklet and make a very rough plan of my letter structure. In the introduction paragraph, I will explain my reason for writing to Mr. Davidson is to provide him with advice in advance of his trip. In the middle paragraph, I will cover all the concerns about flight details, on the flight, and storing the medication once the holiday starts. Finally, I will provide details about what to do if Mr. Davidson loses his medication. This would have a significant impact on his health, so I want to keep this separate. I'm now ready to start writing. I have a clear plan in my mind, and it should be easy to record all the information in the 35 minutes I will have left, and still keep some of this time to check my work at the end. I'm not going to write the whole letter now, but just to point out a few things. Opening my answer booklet, I'm going to start with the reader's name and the address, which I can copy directly from the writing task. Underneath this, I will add the date, which is today in the case notes, 30th of August 2019. Next comes my greeting, Dear Mr. Davidson. There is no need for an RE line when writing to a patient, so this is omitted. Then will come the body of my letter, the paragraphs. The introduction, introducing the reason for writing, then the before flying paragraph, the on the flight paragraph, the storage of medication paragraph, and finally the loss of medication paragraph. Underneath all of this, I will add my ending, yours sincerely, and finally my job title, Pharmacist. As you write the paragraphs, think about how you will summarize the information. The aim is not to write one case note per sentence. For example, the details about airport security can be combined into 1 or 2 sentences. Once you have finished writing, use any time you have left to check your letter against the case notes you underlined to make sure you have included everything you identified was relevant. Read it as Mr. Davidson. By the end of the letter, do you understand the advice and what you need to do for your trip? If necessary, make edits to your letter if anything needs clarifying or adding. Now you have your completed letter, it's time to look at the sample answer. There are some important things to remember with sample letters for official OET tasks. They have been written and checked by both language experts and a pharmacy subject matter expert to make sure they are accurate medically and linguistically. That doesn't mean they are perfect or seen as the only way to write a letter about these case notes. You might have used slightly different language or structure to your letter. Provided you have communicated the situation as per the task clearly to the reader, this will not be a problem. When reading the sample answer afterwards, notice the similarities and differences. If there are any differences, rather than seeing it as something that has to be corrected in your letter, think about why it is different. Why do you think the writer used this word or phrase? Is it more formal? Does it allow them to summarize some detail more effectively? Why do you think they structured their letter like this? Is there any difference in clarity between your version and their version? I want to finish off by giving you a few tips about how you can get the most out of this set of case notes after you've written the letter. Don't just discard this task and letter and move straight on to another task. Take time after each practice letter to learn from it and avoid making the same mistakes next time. Here are 5 things you can do to get the most value out of each practice task you complete. Assess your writing and the sample answer against the assessment criteria. The criteria are free to download from the OET website and contain both a description of the 6 criteria you are assessed on, as well as the evidence of what the assessors are looking for to be able to score you at the different levels. Take each criterion in turn, read the evidence statement for each level, and critically decide which statement is the best match for your writing. Type your letter into a document and check your language and grammar by using free tools such as Grammarly or spell checker grammar functions built into your word processing software. Notice the mistakes that are picked up and use them to create your own checklist of common errors to learn from. Rewrite your letter so you have a perfect copy to refer to as you revise. If you keep looking at your original letter with the mistakes in it, you are training your brain to remember the mistakes. Having a perfect copy to revise from will help improve the accuracy of your writing. Use the case notes as the basis for a speaking role play. Imagine you are having a conversation with Mr. Davidson at the pharmacy. Ask a friend or colleague to play Mr. Davidson's role while you find out details of his trip and provide him with advice. Search the internet for podcasts on travelling with diabetes or medical journal articles covering recent developments in the treatment of the condition to practice your skills for the reading and listening parts of the test. Remember, with the right approach, the writing test is something everyone can do well. For more videos and test strategies, follow our social media channels on Facebook, YouTube and Instagram @officialOET and search the OET blog available on our website.